sure that everything is working. Having trouble getting the YouTube live stream to work. Give me just a second. Okay. Oops. Just updating the website. Make sure that live stream is embedded there. Yeah, it is. Excellent. Cool. Thanks to folks who are watching. Looks like there are a couple folks there. That's great. Happy to have folks follow along. Just FYI, if you are watching, this is me live streaming, recording lessons for an upcoming course. This is not necessarily going to be the most polished thing ever. I go back afterwards and edit. But I wanted to both give folks a sense of what it looks like to record a course behind the scenes. Hopefully it might be helpful as well to folks who are learning, although I am going to be doing kind of multiple takes. Not going to be necessarily the most efficient way to learn, but might be interesting for folks. And I also wanted to do it just as a form of forcing myself to really get to it, because I've struggled with the state of the world and finding time. So this is a really good way to force myself to do it. So again, thanks to folks who are joining. Let me just do one thing. All right, awesome. And I will, said this last time, I'll say it again. You are free to chat with me. I'd love to hear feedback. This is streaming to Twitter, to Twitch, and to YouTube all at the same time. Any of those platforms, I am able to see any comments. If you see me looking over at this screen, it's because I have a second screen. So again, I asked folks yesterday, and I'd love to have you do it again if you're willing. I'd love to know who you are, where you are, because it's just fun for me to know who's watching. So if you don't mind putting that in the chat, that would be great. As I'm waiting for that, yesterday I recorded lessons on importing data, on the concept of tidy data, and then we talked about reshaping data, so primarily using the pivot longer and then pivot wider functions. Today, kind of the next step is dealing with missing data. This is what we're doing with the dealing with missing data. It kind of does build on what we did yesterday. So I have some code yesterday. We're going to assume that, I'm recording lessons that'll obviously be sequential. So if you didn't watch yesterday, it might be a little confusing, but I think you'll be able to pick up pretty well. Cool. So excellent. Looks like we have 3 folks. Laura from Kentucky again. Hello, Laura. Lukman from Nigeria, watching from Italy. Hello, Lukman. Thanks for joining. And then hello again, Patrick, watching from Nairobi. can I just say, I think it's amazing that everybody is watching from all over the world. I'm just super excited to have you. Okay, cool. Let me jump back in. And folks watching, again, if you have any comments, feedback, questions along the way, I'd love to hear it. Please feel free to just put it in the chat. Let me see. Okay, dealing with missing data. I'm going to actually just quickly look through these slides because I have to remember. Okay, actually, I can see that's kind of messed up there. Let me refresh this, see if it looks better. There we go. Let me see something. Wait, I'm confused now looking at this. Oh, there we go. There's a, yeah, okay, perfect. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I'm just thinking because this is back after folks have done the reshaping. Okay. After we have reshaped our data, let's take a look at it and see what's going on with it. One thing we might notice sometimes is that there is data in, hold on, I'm thinking about how to say this. Next, we're going to talk about missing data. There are many ways to handle missing data, and previously in my free course, Getting Started with R, you learned how to handle this using the read_CSV function. You can do the same thing with the read Excel function, and I'll actually show you that when I do the My Turn section. But I also want to show you ways to deal with missing data after you have already imported it. There's reasons why you may want to do this. So let me actually kind of remind us, oh, why does that look like that? Sorry, let me refresh this. All right. Cool. I like the beginning of that. I'm just going to keep going and I'll edit it together. So let's take a look back at the German speakers data that I've been working with. This is what it looks like after we did the pivot longer. So remember we had it wide and then we made it long. We have state, year, and number. Now, if I hit this next button to scroll through and look at the observations, notice something here in the number column. For Arkansas in 2017, the number is listed as dash. Now let's suppose, and this is a fairly common convention, that the dash actually means NA. We're going to use this function here, the NAIF function, to convert that dash into NAs. We do that by using it combined with mutate. So if you recall, mutate is either to create a new variable or to do something to change an existing variable. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say mutate, and we're going to say number equals. So in other words, we're going to overwrite number with something else. And in this case, that something else is going to be NAIF. For NAIF, it takes two arguments. We are going to put the first argument being which variable are we looking at. So we're looking at the number variable, right? Because that's where we saw that dash. And then we have to list what is the character or the symbol or the text or whatever it is, could be a number as well, that we want to convert into an NA. So if I show you the results of this, now, after I run that with that additional line here, let's scroll through. Now you see in Arkansas 2017, we don't no longer have that dash. Instead, we now have an NA. We can also use replace NA. The idea with replace NA is that whereas NA if converts some text, or again numeric, into an NA, replace NA takes an NA, a missing value, and converts it into something else. So let's say, for example, looking at this, we know for Arkansas 2017, it's not that the data was actually missing, it's that there were 0 German speakers. Again, completely hypothetical data. So if I run that, now let's take a look. Let me scroll through. Now I can see Arkansas, and the number for 2017 is 0 because we use that replace NA. So let me flip over here, and for the my turn, I'm going to convert all missing values in the number proficient variable to NA using NAIF. I don't have any values here where replace NA makes sense, but you will use it shortly. So let me flip over here, and I'm going to go to my data cleaning section. Let me actually reload this. I'll probably edit this back. All right, let me take a look at my 3rd grade math proficiency data frame. You can see I have a school ID, proficiency level, and then number. Looking through it, I actually see 2 values here that I'm going to convert to NAs. The star or asterisk, and then the 2 dashes. Okay. Let me do this. And actually, just to clarify, I think in this original data, I think the star actually means there were fewer than 5 students at that level in that school. And so I think for privacy reasons, they suppress the data. I think the 2 dashes means that there are no students. But in any case, I want to suppress it. I want to convert it all to NA because I don't want it to be used when we do summaries. So I'm going to add, this is what we did last time, I'm going to add a new line. I'll do mutate, and I am working with the, the number. I just realized something. Just realized I talked about number proficient here, whereas here it just talks about number. Let me see. So I think what I'm going to do actually, is I am going to, yeah, okay, I'm just going to start as if I'm right here. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to actually change the name of my values to number proficient. Before I just had it as number, so if I run that, you can see now I have number proficient. Okay, now I'm going to make a new line, so I'm going to do mutate. I'm changing the number proficient variable, and I'm saying NA if, and I need to give the variable, so number proficient, and I'll start out by doing the star. So if I run that and then I open this again, now you can see all those stars or asterisks were converted to NAs. And now let me do the same thing with the 2 dashes. Perfect, that works. All right. For your turn, here's what I want you to do. I want you to convert all of the missing values in the number of students variable to NA using NAIF. Then I want you to convert all the NA values that you just made to 0 using replace NA. Hold on, let me do that again. I switched to the last slide too fast. All right, for your turn, here's what I want you to do. I want you to convert all of the missing values in the number of students variable to NA using the NA-if function. Then I want you to convert all of the NA values you just made to 0 using replace NA. And that's because where there is, we are converting it to missing, but actually what is going on there is that there are no students in a particular race ethnicity group at a particular school. I'm going to stop for a second. Lukeman, you just asked about getting the raw data. So it's going to be a little confusing because I did this yesterday, but hold on one second, and I will post the GitHub link. So I just posted that back on Twitter. Actually, I'll post that. Actually, you know what? I'll just post that everywhere. I think everybody should see that now. Go to all the services. Okay, cool. All right, let me see. Run this again. Okay. So again, if someone wasn't here yesterday, just as a reminder, I give people prompts. That's the your turn section, and then I actually record a video of myself doing it, which becomes the solution, and I then post that video as well as the code for folks. Okay. All right, let's take a look at how we do this. I'm going to open this enrollment by race ethnicity 1819 that we have. So you can see there are a bunch of dashes. So I'm going to first do mutate number of students. I don't know why it's not auto-completing, equals NA if number of students, and I'll do that, whoops, dash, open that back up. Wait, that looked kind of weird. Hold on, let me run this again. Oh no, sorry, they're just a bunch of dashes. Okay, so run that. You can see all those are converted to NAs. Now, but what I actually know is where it says here that they're NAs. In fact, there are 0 students of that particular group in that particular, sorry, not school, in that particular district. So I'm going to do mutate number of students equals, and now I'm going to use replace NA number of students. So now it'll look for wherever there's an NA, and it'll replace that with 0. Okay, perfect. All right, let me pause for just a second to stop my recording and make a new recording. All right. Just checking one thing out real quick. All right. Okay. So next we're going to talk about changing variable types. Okay, now that we have dealt with missing data, let's talk about changing variable types. This becomes important. I don't actually want to show that error right away. Hold on one second. So I'm just changing this, I think, so that if it works as I want it to, it's going to first, I just want to display this code, talk about it, and then I want to actually display the error. So let me just knit this again, make it work, hopefully. Is there an error there? Oh, no, just a warning message. Okay. All right, perfect. Yep. All right, let's start that again. Let's talk now about changing variable types. After we have dealt with the missing data, we may need to change variable types. Let me show you why. Let's say we have done all of this. I actually want to highlight a line, sorry. Okay. I'm just going to let this garbage truck outside pass. Sorry, one second. It's just a little bit loud. Okay. Okay. All right. Next, we're going to talk about changing variable types. After we've dealt with missing data, we're going to start to want to do some summarizing. Okay, let's talk about changing variable types. After we've dealt with the missing data in our data frame, we may want to do some summarizing. In order to do that, as you're going to see, we're going to need to change the variable types. Let's take a look at what we might want to do. So if you remember, everything we've done is up to this point. And we had our data. Actually, I'll just even flip back really quick. I don't know why it keeps looking like that. All right, I'm going to refresh this. Just briefly talk through this slide with the data. You know what, actually, I think I'm just going to I'm going to make this a new slide. I'm using, by the way, the Sharingan package, which if you make slides in R is excellent. And in fact, it's a little meta, but I actually talk about using the Sharingan package in the R Markdown section of this course. All right, let me copy this here. And I'm setting eval and echo to be true because I've actually set them to be false by default, because mostly I'm actually just kind of displaying code without evaluating it, without having R really run it. I just want to display it, so that's why I have to do that. All right. Let me just make sure this looks like what I want. Yep. And then I show that. Yeah, perfect. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about changing variable types. Let's take a look back after we have dealt with all of our missing data in our German speakers data frame at what we are left with. So remember, we had state, year, and number. This is after we ran the NA-if and the replace NA. And remember, we converted that to NA and then to 0. And there are some other places where that happened as well. Whoops, right there, for example. Now, let's say we want to summarize. So we want to get, say, the total number of German speakers. The way you would do that is you'd use the summarize function, and you would say total equals sum of number. Now, let me try that. If I run that, what actually happens is I get an error. And our errors tend to be a little bit cryptic, so let's actually look at this. It's saying summarize argument total errored. Total is some number. And then the last line is really what we want to look at. It's saying invalid type character of argument. So what's actually happening here is when I do some number, the number variable is actually character. And the reason that is because when we imported it, that variable, in fact, it was 3 variables. It was German speakers 2017, 2018, 2019, had dashes in them. And so R interpreted those, specifically the read Excel function, interpreted those as character variables. And so as a result, even though we've then converted, used the NA function to get rid of that dash and then use the replace NA to convert NAs to 0, we haven't actually changed the variable type of our number column, and as a result, it's still being treated as character, so you can't do a summary, you can't do a sum of a character variable. So in order to actually do this, we're going to need to change the variable type. And to change variable types, we do this. We're going to add a line with mutate equals, and then there are a number of functions that all start with as dot. So in this case, we want to convert it to numeric. So we say as dot numeric parentheses number. So you just give it whatever variable you want to convert. So when I do, when I convert the number variable to a numeric, now when I run summarize total, it gives me the result, which is this 80,314. All right, let me do the same thing for my turn. I'm going to be working with my data, and I'm going to convert the number proficient variable to numeric using as numeric. Then I want to count the number of students at each proficiency level. Actually, let me just re-record that my turn, because I always flip too quick to the next slide. For my turn, I'm going to begin by converting the number proficient variable to numeric using the as numeric. And then after that, I'm going to count the number of students at each proficiency level. Okay, let me start that again. All right, let me take a look at my third grade math proficiency data. Okay, so I want to get the count of the number of students at each level. So if I were just doing this naively, I would say group by, and let me do it by school and by proficiency level. And then I would do summarize number proficient equals sum of number proficient, and I am going to have to remove NAs because there are NAs. So you see, if I run that, I'm getting this same error. So let me add here number proficient equals as dot, and you can see when I type as dot, that gives me like a whole bunch of options. We are going to use, whoops, not number, as numeric now. We want to convert this to numeric. It's giving me an error. It's saying NAs introduced by coercion. Hold on one second. Just thinking about how to explain that. So it's giving me an error. You can see down here this NAs introduced by coercion. It's just telling us, hey, when I convert this to numeric, there are NAs, and it's saying they're introduced. They were there before as part of the character data, but they're now NAs in this numeric variable. But now when I run this, let me run it one more time. Take a look here. You can see now it has grouped by school. There are 4 levels. And then it has the number proficient in third grade math at each level in each school. Just looking back at this. About to have my 4-year-old twins come in. Might get a little loud for a second. I'm going to give them just a second to come in and go upstairs. Sorry, folks. You might hear our son is struggling with the lockdown situation, so he may be a little unhappy coming in. While I'm waiting, I'm just curious, folks who are watching, kind of how familiar you are with R, what you use R for, if you use R regularly. I'd love to have you chat, put in the chat what you do with R. Cool. Mike's saying don't use it regularly, much more SQL and Tableau, but may use it in the future for data wrangling. Cool. All right, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and get started. It sounds like they're relatively quiet. Okay. So for your turn, here's what I want you to do. I want you to convert the number of students variable to numeric using as numeric. And then I want to make sure you can use your number of students variable to count the total number of students in Oregon. Do that too fast. All right, for your turn, here's what I want you to do. I want you to convert the number of students variable to numeric using as numeric, and then in order to make sure that it's worked, make sure you can use your number of students variable to count the total number of students in Oregon. All right, let me run through the solutions. Okay, let's go ahead and do the solution for this. So we have our, sorry, I can hear them. Just curious if folks who are watching, can you hear, I'm not really sure with my microphone how much it picks up background noise. I'd just be curious to know if folks can hear my children in the background or not. Because if you can't, then I can just keep going. Oh, okay, perfect. Laura, you said you can't hear them. Great. I'm hoping my microphone can't hear them much. Okay, that's good. I'd like to not have folks not be able to hear them at all, but it's Corona time, so can't always get what you want. All right. Let me go back here then. All right, let's take a look at the solution. So I'm going to pop open the enrollment by race, ethnicity, 1819 data. First thing we're going to do, actually, before I even do that, if you're wondering what the variable types are, a really nice package for this is SkimR, and this is covered in the Getting Started with R course, the free course that I offer. But if it's been a while for you, it has a really nice function just called enrollment, called skim. So if I just do skim for my data frame, it shows me the variable types for my variables. So I can see, for example, right now, number of students is character data. Okay, so let me now convert this. So number of students equals as numeric, number of students. Now, if I were to run that again, you can see now number of students is down here. Now it shows up as numeric, which means if I do summarize total, I'll just call this total sum number of students. Let me pop this open again. You can see now I have the total number of students, 580 something thousand. And if you're interested, or if you're wondering, why did I not have to put na.rm equals true here, which I did have to do when I did the my turn section, so I did have to add it here. The reason is when we use the replace na here, we converted all nas into zeros. In other words, there are no more nas in the number of students variable. So I could add it, but I don't have to, and that's why it works without it. All right, cool. Let me stop the recording and start it again. Sorry, just 1 second. Let me actually just flip through these slides because it's been a little while and I just need to remember. I'm obviously going to go back and do this. All right. Next, we're going to talk about advanced variable creation. In the fundamentals of R course, I talk about using mutate to create variables, but in that course, it's done in a really simple way. Let's talk about some more complex ways that you can create and manipulate existing variables. First, let's talk about recode. Recode enables us to change an existing variable and change the values of it. So this is kind of like the template for how it works. You start with a data frame, then you use mutate, and then your new variable equals, and then the recode function. Actually, so I have new variable there, but it could also be existing variable, and actually that's, yeah, I should change that because that's the example is using the same variable. So let me go into my code here. Run that. Okay, let me refresh this. All right. I'm just going to start on this slide. First, let's talk about recode. Recode enables us to recode a variable, and you use it in combination with mutate. So, for example, you start with a data frame, then you use mutate, and you say variable. You could either make a new variable, or you could just overwrite an existing variable, which is what I'm going to do here. Variable equals, and then the recode function, and then you put whatever variable you're working with, and then you do old value equals new value. So let's actually take a look at an example because it's a bit kind of abstract right now. So for example, in our data before, if you remember after we did the pivot long, the variables in the year column were really long. It said like number of German speakers 2017, number of German speakers 2018 and 2019. Let's say we just want to get the actual year. So to do that, we can use recode. We can say year equals recode year, and then number of German speakers 2017 equals 2017, same for 2018, same for 2019, and you can see after I run that, I'm left with this. Now I have state, year, number, right? So it's getting a lot cleaner. Our data is getting a lot cleaner. Let's talk about another way to kind of do this same thing. Let's talk about another way to do the same thing. And actually, I'm going to give you a whole series of examples that are all going to do the same thing to that year variable using a variety of functions. There are a number of different ways to do any single thing in R, and this is a good example. We could also use if-else. If you've done anything in other languages, you'll be familiar with if-else. Even if you've used it in in Excel, you'll be familiar with it. So you can say, wait, I have that new variable, existing variable thing. Hold on. I think I need to check all of my, whoa, no, sorry, that was not what I wanted to do. Come on. Change this everywhere. Just looking at this again. Okay, I think, actually, let me just search for existing. Cool. Okay, let me re-knit this and then I'll run it again. Kind of a big file, which is why it takes just a bit to knit. All right, should be good now. Perfect. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about if-else. You have probably seen if-else in other, if you've used any other language or if you've used Excel. And the way it works is this. You start with a variable. So we're using it, again, within mutate. All of these we're using within mutate because we're changing variables. So we're saying variable equals if-else. So if the variable equals some value, then the argument that comes after that is the value that you want it to have if it's true, and then after that, the else value here is what that variable will become if this is not true. So in other words, if variable does not equal some value. Okay, let me give an example. So here, actually, hold on one second. Okay, so in our data from before, we could say year equals if-else. So if year equals number of German speakers 2017, then make it 2017. Otherwise, just leave it as year. So in other words, don't change it. That's what this the second option here, the else option is. Same thing for 2018, same thing for 2019. So when I do that now, you can see I end up with the same result that I got with Recode, where I now have the year variable here that just has 2017, 2018, 2019. Another option to do the same thing is using the strremove function. This is from the stringr package, which is a package that has a whole series of functions designed to deal with character data. As the name implies, this actually removes text. Give me just 1 second. Okay. So using strremove, it works like this. You start with your data frame, then you do mutate, variable equals, strremove, and then the first argument again is whatever variable you're working with, and then you just list the text that you want to remove. Because thinking back to our data from before, all of the observations have this text, number of German speakers, underscore, before the year, if we just want to keep the year there. So I could do this. I could say year equals strremove year and just remove that number of German speakers underscore text and watch what happens when I do that. I'm now left with year that just has the numeric portion of it, although interestingly, if you actually look at it here, you'll see that it's actually still character. And of course, you could change that if you wanted to. All right, so that's another way you can manipulate your variable. There's also a really nice function that I like. This actually comes from the readr package. It's called parseNumber. And what it does, as the illustration from Alison Horst shows, is if you have a variable that is a character variable, but there's numeric data within it, parseNumber grabs that numeric and pulls it out and makes it into a numeric. It's even simpler in terms of the syntax. You just say variable, mutate variable equals parseNumber variable. And so, for example, with our year data, which remember had that number of German speakers, etc., if I do parseNumber year, now I simply get for the year 2017, 2018, 2019, because it just extracted that numeric. And you may notice, if you have a keen eye, it's actually changed the variable type here. It's now a double, which is numeric, because parseNumber does that when it works. Okay. All right. Next, we're going to talk about case when. Case when is like a more complex version of if-else. If you use if-else and you have kind of multiple conditions that you want to test, you end up having to write multiple lines or really kind of complicated if-else statements. Case when gets around this. And I will say I actually never use if-else. I always use case when. I just find it much simpler to work with. And this is the way it works. Again, you're using it with mutate, and you're saying variable equals case when, and then open parentheses, and then you list a series of tests. So for example, if your variable equals some value, and then you put the tilde, if it equals some value, then we'll give it the value, new value, comma, and then we can put additional tests here. So for example, if variable equals some other value, then we're going to assign it new value 2. If variable equals some third value, then we'll assign it new value 3. And then there's also the option to list a true which is to say any value that doesn't match any of the above criteria but exists, we are going to give it this option, this value for all observations that don't match any above criteria. So let's actually run this, show a real example. So with our year data, we could say if year equals number of German speakers 2017, then do 2017. Same thing for 2018, same thing for 2019. It saves us, in this case, it doesn't actually save us a ton compared to like the if-else, but it saves us a bit of typing. So you can see now when I run that, I get my year as well. Now the real power of case when comes when you actually do more complicated comparisons. So for example, say I wanted to make a new variable called number categorical, and I wanted to look at this kind of number data here, and I wanted to make a series of categories. I could say, for example, if number is less than 500, then let's call that group less than 500. If number is, if I'm using the between function here, so with between we list the number and then we list the lower bound and then the upper bound. So I'm saying if it's between 500 and 1,000, then call it between 500 and 1,000. And if it's greater than 1,000, call it greater than 1,000. So let me run that, and you can see now I have state, year, number, and I have this number categorical. And you can see it has put these into categories. And that's the kind of thing, if you were to try and write that with if-else statements, would get really complicated, whereas case when makes it quite simple. Okay. Okay, for my turn, I'm going to convert all instances of the proficiency level variable to more meaningful observations using all of the options that I have demonstrated: recode, if-else, case when, strremove, and parse number. Actually, the order is off there. I debated about whether to put case when after if else. It kind of seemed like, I mean, it does make sense in a lot of ways because it's a more complex if else. But because I was doing more complicated things at the end, I wanted that to be at the end. So let me just change that. All right. Sorry, let me refresh that. Okay, so for my turn, I'm going to do the following. I'm going to convert all instances of the proficiency level variable to more meaningful observations using all of the ways of doing it that I've demonstrated: recode, if-else, strremove, parse number, and case when. All right, let me look at it here. Let me open up third grade proficiency. Oh, and actually, you know what? I'm going to do one thing. I asked you to kind of group by and second. I can't remember. Sorry, I just can't remember how. Hold on, I need to look at something in terms of where I want folks to end up, because I can't remember where I want them doing that group by. Oh, no, it looks like I do want to keep it. Okay, so yeah, all right, perfect. Okay. All right, let's take a look at our third grade math proficiency 18-19 data frame that we were left with. You can see the proficiency level variable. It's kind of long. It's number level 1. Let's say we just want to strip that and remove, just have it be 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to do it all 4 ways. First, I'm going to do it with recode. So I'll do mutate. And I want proficient. Sorry, my kids are loud. Give me just a couple minutes. They're about to go upstairs. Sorry, folks. They're just, you can hear them downstairs here. They're coming in from a run with my wife. So give me just a couple minutes and they'll head up. Just gonna really quick look through to see how far I think I can get today. Okay, sorry, I can hear them washing their hands now. I'll be right back. I'm just gonna help my wife. I'm gonna close this because I just want it to be a little bit quieter. What? No, I gotta do some other stuff. Okay, sorry about that, folks. All right, back to this. All right, looking at our third grade math proficiency 18-19 data, you can see in this column, ooh, I didn't know that if you hover over it, it actually shows you the variable type. That's cool. In any case, we have it says number level 1, number level 2, etc. I just want to simplify it so it just has for proficiency level 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to go ahead and use mutate. I'm going to start out by doing this with, I'm going to use recode. So I will start out by saying proficiency level equals recode proficiency level. And I always forget the direction. I think it's old variable, new variable, or old name, new name. So number level 1 equals 1. Let me actually just run that and see. Yeah, okay. So it's giving me warnings because it's saying it basically because I only use recode on some of the options. So I'll do it 2, 3, and 4. All right, that works. So that's one way I could do it. Next, I'm going to do if else. So I could do mutate proficiency level equals if else. So if number level, or sorry, if proficiency level equals number level 1, then 1. Otherwise, just leave it. Otherwise, just leave it as proficiency level. And then I can do this for all 4 levels. So I could do 2, 3, 4. Just change 2, 3, 4. Wait, it's giving me an error. Hold on one second. Oh, I think I know what it is. Yeah. So what happened is I put the level as 1 without quotes, which made it a numeric. And so because I was saying basically make it numeric, but if it doesn't meet that criteria, if it's not, in other words, if it's not number level 1, keep the original proficiency level. And because that was a character variable, it was throwing an error on me. So if I put it in quotes, then now it's still, for example, I can see here that it's character. All right, so that's done with if else. Let's do it. To be honest, I wouldn't actually do either of those because as you could see, it's actually a bunch of work to do the if else and the recode. just to be clear, this code is no longer running because it's not part of our pipeline. So let me do this with str remove. So I would do mutate proficiency level equals str remove proficiency level, and then I have to look for what's the text across all 4 that I want to remove, and it's that number level underscore. So now if I run it, it gives me the same thing, and you're not actually seeing anything different because each time I do it, it's just doing the same thing. So that's a pretty efficient way to do it. Let me do a parse number. I think this is actually how I would do it. Equals parse number proficiency level. I would do it that way because it's the most efficient. In other words, it's the smallest amount of code. So you can see now I've done the same thing, and if I hover here, you can see, oh, it still says it's character. Hold on, let me, whoops, sorry, wrong one. Yeah, now it's actually showing as numeric. And last, I'm going to do it with case when. So I could say proficiency level equals case when just copy this. So you can see this, in this case, is not really the most efficient way of doing it. And yeah, let me just close it and open it back up. Yep. And this did not throw an error despite the fact that I didn't put quotes around it, because it actually evaluates the whole function here, the mutate function. And at the end, after it does that, it has assigned it to it has created it as a as numeric. If I were to put, for example, that 4 in quotes, then it's going to give me an error. It's going to say must be a double vector, in other words, numeric, not character. So it just has to, all elements in a vector have to be the same type. All right, so now I got what I want. Okay. Just need to look at this real quick. Okay. All right, for your turn, I want you to remove the x underscore 2018 underscore 2019 portion of the race ethnicity variable using str remove. Then I want you to convert all instances of the race ethnicity variable to more meaningful observations. And I've given an example here to indicate what I mean. And to do that, you can use any of the following. Use recode, if else, or case when. All right, let's look at the solution for this. So you can see in our race ethnicity variable, all of the race ethnicity variables have that x 2018 underscore 19 there. So I am going to remove this. If you had summarize total equals some number of students like that, you're going to need to go ahead and remove that. That was just a example from before. So go ahead and remove that. Let me run that again. All right, let's get rid of that 2018-19 text. So I'm going to say mutate race ethnicity equals str remove, and I have to list first what variable am I removing text from, and then I'm going to list that pattern that I want to remove. So if I open this back up, you can see now that has become more meaningful, or more meaningful in the sense that I've removed that excess 2018-19. All right. Next thing I asked you to do was convert these into more meaningful observations. I think this is a good example of where case when would work well. If else would get a little bit complicated. Recode would work fine as well. I'm going to show case when. So for case when, let me look at the various options. I'm going to say if race ethnicity equals American Indian Alaska Native, then I will convert this to American Indian Alaska Native. I'm going to actually pause here for a second. If anyone's watching, I'm not actually going to show myself typing this all out. I'm actually just going to copy it here and zoom ahead. So let me... Actually, I'll use the Recode example I have in my solutions. No, actually, I'll just, hold on, copy this in. Almost done. Whoops. Okay. All right, you can see now I have listed all of the groups. Let me go ahead and run this. And now if I open this up, I have much more meaningful observations for the race ethnicity variable. Okay, I'm just... You know, I think I can actually feel my energy waning, so I'm actually going to stop for today. And I think, actually, hold on. Maybe I'll do one more. Let me see how long this is. Give me 1 second. Yeah, I think I'm going to stop for today. Thank you to those of you who joined. I appreciate it. I will be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time doing the same thing. If you are interested in joining, if you have any questions, please reach out to me on Twitter, email david@therestofus.com. All right, thanks, folks.